Yo, Vycery here. Title Update 4 is not too long away anymore, and with it, we will be getting some much needed weapon adjustments. Like I said in my previous video, I want to talk more about what weapons need to change, and what I would do to make them better. We are doing this in a tier list. Weapons that need major changes, weapons that can use some minor adjustments, and weapons that are good the way they are. At the very end, I will say a few things about Artem weapons in general, and how they could get more customization. Before we go in, I want to say that this is all my opinion. You can agree or disagree, but please keep it civilized. We all have the same goal, and we don't need to fight against each other. I want to make that clear. With that said, let's start with Greatsword. Greatsword is very offset focused right now, with two-shot slash being only very usable if you have the opening. And that's where the issue lies. Two-shot slash takes a bit of time to perform, and it's barely dealing more damage than a strong charge slash. You can go into it after an offset, but you can't offset when the monster is toppled, paralyzed, and so on. Here is what I would change. Make two-shot slash stronger. For the commitment and time it takes to use that attack, it should hit more than it does right now. I think 15 to 20% more damage should do it. On successful offset, let the follow-up two-shot slash start at the same level of the offset used. Right now, if you do a level 3 offset, you still have to charge a two-shot slash after, and on some monsters you simply don't have the time to do so. And finally, give us back some sort of shortcut, like we had in World. With monsters getting faster, like Seregios or Omega, it's nearly impossible to hit them with a two-shot slash without the monster being immobilized. World solved that problem with the Slinger Burst, and I wish we had something similar in Wilds. Basically, make two-shot slash more usable. This won't change the weapon completely, and keep the original idea, so I put Greatsword in the minor changes category. Longsword is a pretty solid weapon right now, but I still have a few things I would like to adjust. One thing is that I would like if ISS would be more risky with a higher reward. You can basically spam ISS if you want, and if you fail it, there's no drawback. Again, World made it more risky, with losing a level if you mistime it, but also rewarded you with very high damage when done correctly. And with the bigger window you have in Wilds, it feels not as risky anymore. The second thing would be an increase of elemental damage. There was a buff to Crimson Slash that already buffed the motion value, but it wasn't enough. We have 3 ways to solve this. Buff the motion value more on Crimson Slash 1 and 2 in favor of element, make skills like Critical Element, Coalescence and Burst better for elemental damage, or increase the elemental cap. Those things could make Elemental Longsword better and more usable. Those changes are not only for Longsword exclusively, and I hope that the skills mentioned are getting better in general. Again, those are some small things and mainly just some number changes, so I put Longsword in minor changes. For Sword and Shield, I have not much to say. I feel like the weapon is well rounded and has a lot of potential in the right hands. It's fast, it has a lot of movement options, and the damage is acceptable. There are 2 things though I would like. First, bring back oils. Oils will make Sword and Shield more unique, and also makes use of the ability to use items when the weapon is drawn. Affinity Oil and Stamina Oil should make a comeback, with Mind's Eye Oil also being an option. In addition, I would give Sword and Shield status and element oils. What I mean is that, for example, if you use Paralysis Oil, you gain a flat amount of status that replaces your current element. If you already have Para on your weapon, you get either a flat amount or a percentage added. Same for the elemental oils. In my mind, that would even more play into the Jack of all trades description of the weapon. Second, I would like if it dealt more elemental damage across the board. It's becoming a theme that in Wilds, weapons deal more raw damage. Even the ones that should historically focus more on element. We have more of this later on. You can argue that those are some significant changes, but I still put SNS in minor changes, since I don't expect such changes like oils to come in a title update. Dual blades are an example of a good weapon with a relatively high skill ceiling. Some people say it's too strong, but I disagree. There is still a lot to manage in order to get good damage, like stamina or the demon gauge. It also got more complicated in wilds, with more combo options and the perfect dodge. Dual blades are good how they are, and I would not change them. Instead, I would buff the other weapons to bring them up to the same level. It could use a bit of more elemental damage, but even without it, it's a solid weapon that doesn't need any change. Keep it like it is. My main weapon Lance is sadly again at the bottom when it comes to damage output. It is understandable to some degree if you factor in the defensive capabilities, but it's still sad. It also doesn't help that the guard skill does nothing to your perfect block, which is the majority of the time. However, I do like some of the changes Lance got in wilds, most notably the double counter thrust. An attack that activates offensive guard, negates all damage, and can counter pretty much every attack that only has one hitbox, even pins. Now, there are some things I would like to change. Like I mentioned, make guard usable on perfect blocks. That would not only benefit Lance, but all weapons that can block. Speaking of perfect blocks, I'm very sad that Lance did not get cross sweep from Sunbreak. That attack would synergize very well with perfect blocks. I rarely to never use payback thrust, so I would replace that with cross sweep for a high damage option aside retribution thrust. Payback thrust is also an option out of power guard, but again I never use it. Together with our community, we thought about bringing back counter clutch. That would replace payback in power guard. To make counter clutch useful, we thought that it could make wounds on the monster. Now spend that a bit further and make it so that the first instant makes a white scar. If you counter clutch on an existing scar, you produce a wound, and if you do it on a wound, you gain a good damage increase. With the already existing wound cooldown on most monsters, you won't be able to spam it, but it could be a nice option, especially in multiplayer, to quickly make wounds and make Lance more important. Next, raise the motion values. I know that Lance got a pretty substantial buff not too long ago, but I feel like more could be done, especially in the elemental direction. I would also like to have a reliable way to activate Counter Strike. Since double counter thrust has the property to activate offensive guard without actually blocking, how about power guard activates Counter Strike? That would make power guard more attractive and also buffs Lance indirectly with Counter Strike. Lance does work without those changes and I still have fun playing the weapon. It would make the weapon better though. I put Lance in the minor changes because it's still good how it is. Gunland needs in my opinion some rebalancing. White shelling right now is the best shelling type for pretty much everything. Sure, normal shelling comes close, but white is still better in the long run, and simply has the better weapon options. Also, elemental shelling would be awesome, and gives Gunlands way more options. This is what I think. Have a better distinction between the shelling types. Normal shelling should be best for full burst again, white for charge shelling, and long, since we don't really do poke shell anymore, make it better for the worm stack combo. Violent Fire should only take into account your raw, not the shelling type, so every Gunlands can use it. Give us elemental shelling to open up more diversity. It can scale with how much element your weapon has. Maybe only a part of the damage is elemental, and give every monster a multiplier for Gunlands, so we keep the idea of fixed damage for shelling alive. Lastly, make Slaplands more viable, with either a buff like we had in Sunbreak, or by simply increasing the motion value. It sounds like a lot, but just like Lance, Gunlands does work without those changes, and it's still a pretty decent weapon. I put it in minor changes. Hammer has one major problem: damage output. I think that Hammer should deal more. Doing a mighty charge and barely hit as much as a level 3 strong charge slash from Greatsword doesn't feel good. So we need better motion values. Another thing is that Hammer doesn't have any hyper armor outside of offset attacks. That can be solved by replacing the side blow with Water Strike from Sunbreak. Not only would that make it easier to activate Counter Strike, but it also gives you a good way to deal with fast monsters like Seregios. The Water Strike counter, when done correctly, combos into an upswing, which for Hammer is an offset. That means that you can, for example, Water Strike the first swing of Seregios and then offset the second one. Aside from that, I think Hammer is a solid weapon and it's fun to play. For that, I'll put it into minor changes. Hunting Horn is for me the best iteration we ever had. The skill ceiling is pretty high, it's relatively difficult to learn, and the damage potential is insane. If played correctly, it's one of the highest hitting weapons in the game. I really like that. For years Hunting Horn was seen as a support weapon, and now it completely breaks out and shows that it can demolish monsters just like any other weapon, sometimes even better. The difficulty comes with knowing what songs to play, which is already hard enough, with multiple lists to learn, keeping the buffs active, and managing the echo bubbles. I don't think there's a single thing I would change about it. Keep it like it is. Switch Axe is complicated. It's a fun weapon to play for me, but there are flaws. Most of your damage is locked behind full release slash, and on some monsters like Lejarchus, if you do it at the wrong time, and Leggy decides to do the big Thunder AoE, you lose the majority of your health or even card. On faster monsters, you most of the time are not even able to do full release slash in the first place. To remedy that, give full release slash more damage reduction, and maybe a way to cancel it with a roll in case there is an attack you don't want to tank. Instead of decreasing the damage of full release slash, increase the damage of the other attacks. Mainly normal sword and axe hits. On the topic of normal attacks, give Axe mode amped again with Power Axe. Right now Power Axe feels pointless and only adds a very minuscule buff to Axe attacks. That not only would make Axe mode better, but also change the playstyle to use it more and not just rely on sword mode. Next is to give Zero Sum Discharge a bit more damage, and a way to cancel the huge downtime it has. One idea is to be able to perform a Soaring Raven Blade from Sunbreak after doing a full Zero Sum Discharge. That would make the attack more usable and also an option for fast monsters. Let us counter right after another counter. Longsword can ISS after another, Lance can double counter thrust back to back, but Switch Axe can't. That is weird. And of course, Rabbit Morph should have a way higher impact. The skill feels like a waste on Switch Axe. It should speed up the whole animation, not just the beginning, and should apply to more attacks in general. Those are some big changes, but I think Switch Axe does need it. I still like to play it, but with those changes, we would have more playstyle options and more variety. Because it is a long list, I put Switch Axe in the major changes category. Charge Blade is one of the weapons that need the most attention. It's simply too slow to get the damage out, and has some defensive issues. It's not very fun for me to play on the faster monsters. A lot of people already aired their opinion on it, but here are my thoughts. First of all, the damage is fine. I don't think it needs a motion value change. What we do need is a defensive option in Savage Axe. Something like Ready Stance. That would make it more comfortable to play, and is also a fast block. Maybe let it cost half a file, so we can spam it, and really only use it when needed. We could also use a way to activate Savage Axe, outside of the ways we already have. Needing a monster to get it ready is something that can backfire quickly. What if there is no wound? What if you can't perfect block? Since there's now an option to charge your shield when loading files, we could have another button to get Savage Axe. On the PS5 controller layout, it's triangle for the sword charge, circle for the shield charge. And I would add R2 for Savage Axe when your shield is amped. That will give you the opportunity to get Savage Axe even when the monster is immobilized. Let's move to SAD. My opinion, the damage is good, but the way to get it is bad. The need of an AED beforehand slows it down a lot and makes normal SADs pointless. Just like Sunbreak did, Give SAD out of Perfect Guard a damage bonus. The same damage bonus you get when you do an AED before. That way you speed up the weapon a bit and make SAD more usable. Moving away from X mode, Sword mode also needs a small adjustment. A faster way to charge it. We have multiple ways to get Savage, 2 ways to charge your shield, but only one option for the sword. I like how Rise did it. We don't have counter peak performance, but how about you can charge your sword after a perfect block if your shield is charged? Let Rapid Morph apply the speed increase for the whole animation. With those changes, I think Charge Blade is faster and also more defensive. I don't think an offset is needed here. It simply can't keep up right now. I put Charge Blade in major changes. Insect Glaive is an interesting one. You have to talk about both the weapon and the Kinsect separately. Most of the damage is fine, but there are things that need to be addressed. As for the weapon, Tornado Slash needs a buff. It feels underwhelming, and compared to Rising Spirit Slash, it loses all the time, even on monsters that are bad for RSS. Descending Thrust and Strong Descending Thrust also need some adjustment. You can increase the damage by performing aerial attacks up to 2 times, but it's not enough to justify the time spent. We need a substantial increase in damage to make it on par with the ground combo. Speaking of aerial attacks, it would be nice to have the stamina recovery start at the attack animation and not at the end of it. That would make aerial attacks a bit better, and if you use Second Wind, it would also be more comfortable. Also, the amount build up for aerial attacks makes little sense to me. Back in World, Strong Jumping Advanced Slash only had mount build up at the very last hit, giving Strong Jumping Slash a reason to be used for its good mount opportunities. In Wilds, Strong Jumping Advanced Slash has mount build up at every hit, making Jumping Slash borderline useless. I will change it back to how it was in World. The last thing for the actual weapon is the offset. Personally, I think Insect Glaive could use a perfect dodge better, especially when you take into account that you also have an aerial dodge. But since we have the offset already, and I don't expect it to get replaced, we still need some changes. A unique follow-up is not necessarily needed, but either we get hyper armor for the whole duration, or we get a way to cancel the followed attacks with a vault or a roll. I had it happen way too many times that I successfully get the offset, but all my attacks completely whiff, or I get hit by something else, and I can't deal damage. On to the Kinsect. Firstly, let the Kinsect adapt the status of your weapon, just like it's already done with Element. That would make status builds a tiny bit more viable. Next, Dusts. Right now they are basically useless. Maybe let the Kinsect produce Dust when you attack in focus mode, or when you use the Kinsect drill attack. I'm not sure how to exactly solve that problem. At this point, removing the Dust effect wouldn't bother me. One more thing are the Kinsect unique bonuses. Some combinations are just bad. I think it would be nice to have a little bit more freedom, and have the Kinsects more customizable, in a way of being able to choose either one or of both bonuses yourself. That opens up more possibilities. And for the love of God, give us layered Kinsects. We have been asking for this since World. It's time to finally realize this. Finally, I want to address something that maybe you are not aware of. Insect Glaive has a frame-dependent attack in Rising Spirit Slash. If you play at exactly 38 frames, you get more ticks and deal more damage. You can see that in speedruns, and if you want to deal more damage, you have to play at 38 FPS. I get that most people probably don't care, but I still think it should get fixed. Overall, Insect Glaive is fun to play. The control layout on controller is a little bit iffy, however with enough practice, it's not too bad. I just feel like there are monsters where RSS is not that great, IG misses damage, and I catch myself not using IG on those matchups at all. Even with all those things, I put Insect Glaive in the minor changes. Oh, Bow. What happened to you? To be honest, I'm not a big fan of Bow right now. I was playing it mainly in World, pretty often in Rise, and in Wilds it felt off. It's not an elemental weapon anymore. I mean that it's not worth investing a lot into element because raw damage is better. Here's what I would do. Give Bow better elemental motion values across the board. Dragon Piercer and Thousand Dragons are both already decent, but for the normal shots, more element would be nice. The big one is coatings. First, the restocking. It's cool that we have an infinite amount now, but it just feels like busy work. It feels like an arbitrary way to interrupt your combo and make you lose your charge. And it's not that you deal good damage without the coatings. Close range coating is a 40% damage increase. So not using it means you deal significantly less damage. Having to re-equip your coatings after 10 arrows doesn't add any depth to the weapon. I would like to either have a skill that would increase the limit of coatings, the option to equip more coatings at once if I hold the button longer in exchange for more trick gauge, or that different bows have different amounts of coatings. Maybe a bow with more raw and better stats has less coatings per reload than a bow with less raw. The issue has multiple solutions, and any of them are better than what we have right now. And of course the coatings themselves. We are basically only using close range, since it gives the highest damage increase. Bow is already pretty much a ranged melee weapon, so the impaired range of close range coating is negligible. Power coating is straight up weaker and brings nothing to the table. Pierce coating is even worse. I really like the idea of pierce coating, just as I liked how Rice handled it, with every bow having different shot types depending on the charge level. But in Wilds, pierce coating is too weak. To make power coating unique enough to be usable, give it an elemental modifier on top of its raw increase. That alone would shift the usable bows and would give more options. For pierce coating, just increase the damage. Even on bigger monsters, it still falls behind. It's really a shame. Next is the Tracer. I don't use that at all. It's nice for newer players to learn the weapon and don't pay too much attention to the aim, but in my opinion, you should always deal more damage by manual aiming instead of relying on homing arrows. I wouldn't remove it though. Maybe instead of making arrows home to it, it can be similar to Butcher's Bind, or a ranged version of Stake Thrust from Rice. Maybe it gives more part break if you hit it, or creates wounds faster. Something different than homing arrows. I mentioned that Dragon Piercer and Thousand Dragons are decent, but Thousand Dragons doesn't have any charge levels, and Dragon Piercer has two different options. I would like if both can have a system to be used as a combo finisher. The more shots you do before these attacks, the higher the damage you will deal. That is not a necessity, but it would be cool to have that option. With those changes, Bow might come back as one of the most fun weapons for me. In its current state, I don't like it. It feels too much like an artificial slowdown. I think Bow does need some substantial adjustments. For that, I put it in major changes. For light and heavy bowgun, I will talk about the weapons and then the ammo itself. First, light bowgun. Overall, I enjoy it. I like how mobile it can be, and the damage output is solid with the right ammo. That doesn't mean there are no flaws, however. I think light bowgun needs a perfect dodge. Only having that small step and slide is not enough anymore with monsters having big area of effect attacks and lingering hitboxes. Make it similar to bow, where you get a small amount of rapid fire gauge back each time you successfully dodge. On rapid fire gauge, why do we have that forced exit animation? If you get caught in it, especially on higher tier monsters, it spells certain death. An easy fix would be to just let us shoot normally, even when the gauge is depleted. It's a small thing, but it's still annoying to deal with it. Another thing is the chaser shot, especially for spread. If you do a chaser shot in rapid fire gauge, you can evade quite quickly out of it, but outside of rapid fire mode, you take ages to dodge. This feels bad. It feels like I don't want to do the chaser shot when I don't have rapid fire mode at all. Just let us dodge at the same time. Lastly, more bowgun mods. We have no skills at all that can reduce recoil, only opening shot for reload reduction, and we lost the bowgun mods we had in World for that. It would be really nice to have more variety when it comes to that. Right now the only criteria is what ammo you can use and how many shots you have. Every bowgun feels the same, with the only exception being the Seregios bowguns. This also counts for heavy bowgun, so I won't bring it back up. Light bowgun lost some of its complexity in the preparation department and gained some more things when it comes to gameplay. I do like the weapon, but it can be better. Light Bowgun goes into the minor changes. Heavy Bowgun is solid. It feels like a more tanky version of Light Bowgun and can deal more damage, but still has some flaws. Why can't we change the shield? It would be awesome to be able to switch the shield for something else like a tackle, or the good old melee attack. I understand that it needs the shield for power clashes, but what if some had it and others didn't? That would mix up the weapons a bit, and for different monsters, you pick different bowguns. Another idea would be to change the shield for the offset. I think the offset is too awkward to reach, and it takes ages to get there. You can't even start shooting normally after a successful offset. If for some bowguns you have the shield, and for others the offset, you can pick the one you prefer, and it opens more possibilities. The special ammo needs a buff. I barely to never use Wyvern Heart or Wyvern Piercer. It would be awesome to be able to have more special ammo focused builds that can compete. In general, Heavy Bowgun is decent, but it has so many options and things I just don't use because they're either too weak, like the cluster bombs, or not worth the time investment. I do really like how the Seregios weapons change the playstyle, and I hope we get more like this. Heavy Bowgun ends up in the minor changes. When it comes to ammo, we only really have a handful of good ones. Pierce, Spread, and Element are the most used. The remaining types need a buff in either damage or amount. Normal ammo needs damage, it's too weak. Same goes for Wyvern ammo. Sticky does need a small damage increase and more KO buildup. We also only have one light bowgun that can use rapid fire sticky, and that is Sticky 1. Cluster ammo also needs a buff and more ammo. It's weird that the Wyvern Blast Ignition does nearly the same damage without consuming any ammo. Slicing does already good damage, but the amount you have is not enough to hunt an 8-star or a 9-star monster without the need to restock. Status ammo as well as support ammo are barely used, but are good enough. I would like it if we had more bowguns that can use multiple ammo types at once and not hyper-focus on only one. Now I will say some words about the Artians. We will be getting some changes to Artians, but I want to include a thought I have to make Artians more customizable. It would be awesome if we could change specifics. For example, if we could change song lists for Artian hunting horns, the shelling type for gunlands, the coatings for bow, or the file type for both charge blade and switch axe. We can already do that to some degree with the bowguns. Crafting an elemental bowgun will let you use that elemental ammo, or a blast bowgun gives you sticky. The fact that you can already change the stats and the element of an Artian weapon when you craft them leads me to believe that we could also change weapon specific attributes as well. With that, Artians will become more used, but it also gives us more customization options that can lead to more variety. And that's it. That's all I have for you today. What do you think should change? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Again, keep it civilized. We all have our opinions on things, and that's okay. No need to get angry at each other. With that said, thank you for watching. Have a good one.